For 11 years, Randy Rankin ran a children's home. He raised money for kids who had nowhere else to go, donated houses, donated land, donated cash, all of it given by people who trusted that it would go toward one thing, taking care of children. And for at least 5 of those years, prosecutors say, Rankin was quietly moving that money somewhere else, into his own name. 2 houses, a mobile home, renovations on properties connected to him and his family, all paid for, they allege, with the charity's money. When investigators finally added it up, the number came to $4.4 million. This is the story of how a man trusted to protect vulnerable children allegedly built himself a real estate portfolio out of donations meant for them, and how, after 5 years, it all came apart in a small courtroom in eastern New Mexico. Portales, New Mexico is a small town on the Eastern Plains, not far from the Texas border. And for decades, one of its most respected institutions has been the New Mexico Baptist Children's Home, a nonprofit connected to the Baptist Convention of New Mexico that exists, in its own words, to bring hope to hurting children and families. Randy Rankin, full name David Randall Rankin, was its executive director for 11 years. By all accounts, he was well-liked and well-trusted. The woman who would eventually succeed him, Serenity Richard, worked alongside him for 8 years. She'd later tell a courtroom she considered him a mentor. Like a lot of charities, the children's home didn't just run on cash donations. People gave it property, houses, land, sometimes whole estates, as gifts to the ministry. And that's where prosecutors say the scheme began. Rather than keeping these donated properties in the charity's name, Rankin allegedly had at least some of them titled to himself. Then there was the second man in this story, a local contractor named Jose Lopez. Lopez wasn't an employee of the children's home. He didn't draw a salary from it, and he wasn't on its books the way a staff member would be. But prosecutors say he was still allowed to charge purchases directly to the organization's accounts, without ever having to submit the receipts that actual employees were required to turn in. That one detail, a contractor with a charity credit line and no paperwork trail, is, according to investigators, where a lot of this story's money quietly disappeared. Here's how prosecutors say it worked. The children's home would approve real, legitimate-sounding construction projects. In one case, a property in Estancia, New Mexico had burned down, and the organization approved funds to demolish it and rebuild. In another, there was money set aside for renovations on a property in Alamogordo. On paper, that money was going toward rebuilding homes for the charity. In practice, prosecutors allege, much of it was redirected to pay Jose Lopez for work on Randy Rankin's own properties, in Portales and in Cloudcroft, including a home belonging to Rankin's wife's family. To move that kind of money, investigators say Rankin didn't just dip into the checking account. He allegedly requested that funds be transferred out of the children's home's investment and endowment accounts. Money meant to be a long-term financial cushion for the organization, and into the operating account, where it could then be paid out to Lopez. And to keep it from looking suspicious, prosecutors say the paper trail was doctored to match. Forged or inflated receipts and invoices, board meeting minutes that, according to the criminal complaint, were allegedly added to and altered after the fact, padding the record to make the spending look approved and accounted for. Over roughly 5 years, from 2016 to 2021, investigators say Jose Lopez personally collected more than $4.4 million connected to children's home projects, for work that was, in the words of investigators, frequently inflated, duplicated, or never performed. During that same stretch, Lopez didn't file a single tax return. He also wasn't a licensed contractor in the state of New Mexico, and he operated under at least 3 different business names over the course of the scheme. So to summarize what prosecutors allege, a charity meant to house and support children was, without its board fully realizing it, functioning as a funding source for one man's real estate, laundered through a second man's unlicensed, untaxed contracting business. Randy Rankin didn't disappear. Eventually, he made a deal. Rather than face all 30 of his original charges, Rankin agreed to plead guilty to 10 felony counts. 8 counts of fraud over $20,000, 1 count of forgery over $20,000, and 1 count of disposing of stolen property over $20,000. The sentencing hearing was held on June 13, 2026, in the 9th Judicial District Court in Portales, in front of Judge Drew Tatum. 2 women stood up to speak about what Rankin's actions had cost. The former board chair, Laura Harlan, told the court she fell prey to a man who was lying, omitting, and making excuses whenever an inquiry or a situation was questioned. And Serenity Richard, the woman who now runs the children's home, who worked beside Rankin for 8 years and once called him a mentor, told the judge this wasn't a single lapse in judgment. In her words, it was a pattern, repeated across all 11 years he led the organization. Rankin's attorney, Eric Dixon, made one final request. 90 days before his client had to report to prison so that Rankin, now 74 years old, could, as Dixon put it, get his affairs in order. Judge Tatum said no. Randy Rankin was taken into custody immediately, right there in the courtroom. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. As part of his plea agreement, he's also required to return 2 properties in Portales and a mobile home to the children's home, and to write a formal letter of apology to the Baptist Convention of New Mexico. It didn't stay hidden forever. In January of 2022, someone inside the children's home noticed the numbers weren't adding up. The organization filed an embezzlement and fraud report with the Portales Police Department. And on that exact same day, Randy Rankin was fired. Now, you might expect a guilty man to go quiet at that point. Rankin didn't. In March of 2022, he sued the children's home for wrongful termination. In his lawsuit, he claimed he'd personally spent more than $70,000 of his own money on children's home projects, and he wanted the organization to pay him back. The investigation kept moving anyway. In November of 2023, a Roosevelt County grand jury handed down indictments. Rankin was charged with 28 counts of fraud, 1 count of forgery, and 1 count of disposing of stolen property. Jose Lopez was indicted separately, facing 30 counts of fraud, 3 counts of attempted tax evasion, and a charge for acting as a contractor without a license. Lopez was arrested on November 7, 2023. He was released on bond. And then he vanished. As far as the public record shows, Jose Lopez skipped out on the case entirely. He was never brought back into custody, and to this day, there's no public confirmation that he's ever been located. The man prosecutors say personally pocketed $4.4 million simply disappeared before he ever had to answer for it in front of a jury. After the sentencing, Serenity Richard released a statement on behalf of the organization. "We are thankful to see the legal process reach a resolution that reflects the seriousness of this matter," she said. "While no legal outcome can undo the harm caused, this sentencing allows us to move forward and stay fully focused on the ministry to children and families who need us most." It's worth sitting with that for a second, because no legal outcome can undo the harm caused. $4.4 million is money that never became a renovated home for a family that lost everything in a fire. It never became a bed, a meal, or a caseworker's salary for a child who needed one. It became a real estate portfolio for a man the organization trusted completely for 11 years without anyone catching on. And the man prosecutors say actually pocketed most of that money, Jose Lopez, has never faced a courtroom for it at all. Randy Rankin is now behind bars. But this story doesn't really have an ending yet. Not until someone finds Jose Lopez. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe. And if there's a case you'd like us to review and turn into a video, leave it in the comments below.